Since the Second World War, the federal government has played a key role in helping build affordable housing in Canada. Ottawa helped house Canadians through financing the construction of over 600,000 cooperative, non-profit, and low-cost housing units. In 1993, the Liberal government withdrew entirely from creating affordable housing, making Canada the only industrialized country without a national housing program. Since then, Canada has experienced a severe housing and homelessness crisis. Production of social housing across Canada plunged from nearly 10,000 units in 1989 to only 1,500 new units in 1998. Resolution passed declaring homelessness a national disaster.
It really came about because, well, the concentration of poverty in the West Side core neighborhoods. There were the 5 community associations throughout the 80s and early 90s were beginning to work together more cooperatively because they were seeing that they needed to join forces because, you know, issues don't end at the boundary of Pleasant Hill and start again at the boundary of Riversdale. The community associations were finding that their mandates were quite limited, that they were set up by the city actually to work on recreational programming in communities, and that the core area had pressing social and economic issues that needed to be addressed.
Kibbles. Just trying to make ends meet and have 4 children. It's hard enough to put money away for a down payment. We had money in the bank, but when his job ceased to exist and McDonald's consolidated, it got worse. When you're on welfare and partial assistance, you know, it's stupid. You know, you can't make ends meet. You're told by social services you're not allowed to have a computer, you're not allowed to have a car.
Because if you're on social services, which is a major part of our communities, they can't build up equity because social services takes it back right away. People who are working in the neighborhoods were part-time employed or minimum wage, just barely making enough to pay the bills.
Nobody has the money to just go out and buy a house just right off the hop unless you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth, which I wasn't. So I was getting a PTA allowance from the government, and that's what I used to live on. So that's what I used to pay my rent with.
The accommodations were pretty bad for what I could afford because I was on assistance, and they really don't give you a lot to splurge on when it comes to living. So you're pretty limited, so you have to dip into your budget to try and find something decent. And even that was pretty hard. But I managed to find something in the neighborhood, and it wasn't great, but I moved twice in that year, just always trying to look for something better than what you had. And I wanted to stay in the neighborhood I was in, Pleasant Hill, because my daughter was in school there, and I sort of had in mind I didn't want her to have to be moving, changing schools, and you know, you got to try to find some stability at least for your child, you know.
If we know about the struggles that families face in terms of finding appropriate or affordable housing in the community, many of the families have experienced you know, very poor rental markets where the housing isn't necessarily appropriate, it's not necessarily clean or well developed or well built.
Housing really is in some ways an economic issue, but it is also very much a health issue. It certainly is critical to the stability of neighborhoods. If families don't have the housing that they need for their family group, almost nothing else works. The family health suffers, the family education or training suffers, family employment suffers. Each of those is a destabilizing influence in the family. And if the families are not stable, the neighborhood's not stable.
awesome. Beautiful. That's a little mini snowman. Yeah, look. Little mini snowman. When I was growing up in the neighborhood, we had a lot of kids and they grow old. A lot of developments with the houses being torn down because they're old and apartments being built, and then you lost all your friends because they kept moving away. Bye! Bye! Which then gets you angry.
Yeah. So you want to turn that around, right?
Well, you don't get any connection with your neighbors because they're there, and then all of a sudden they're gone, and then there's new ones, and you finally get to know them by their first name and they're gone.
Yeah.
So it's a thing of how can you help to have your kids have the same kind of life and the lifelong friendships that you had when you were growing up.
Yeah.
And how you do that is provide some opportunity for families to actually think about being able to stay in one place for a long period of time.
True.
The community was active. There were some key leaders in the community that were refusing to accept the inevitable fall and collapse of their neighborhood.
And they thought that having their own organization, community development organization, could not only speak and be a voice on behalf of the West Side core neighborhoods, but also do development work that would be led by the community itself.
Maybe we need to be looking at the co-op model and how that works, and how we could maybe do something around a housing co-op.
And so in 1995, at a 3-day workshop on that whole issue of how communities could lead social and economic development in their own neighborhoods, they all agreed to form their own community economic development organization, a not-for-profit organization.
Members of Quint developed the idea of forming homeownership cooperatives that would purchase and renovate houses. The co-op would hold title on the property, but individual families would pay mortgages on their own homes. Families would be committed to the cooperative for a minimum of 5 years. The families have the option of assuming their mortgage and taking title of their home.
Quint came along at a time where there was perhaps a question that this job was too big for all of us. Perhaps this job was just insurmountable. Quint, to their credit, with their conviction, said that's just not acceptable. That's not any kind of solution.
Because the ultimate goal is to deal with the affordable housing issue in Saskatoon, and one organization can't do it by itself. It's a much bigger agenda than one small community-based organization can do on its own.
We have to do our work in a collective, in a partnership. We need to realize that unless we do that, and we're not going to see the kind of change that we want to change in our community.
We've got to have buy-in by other levels of government and bring them back to the table for that collective support.
So having the Quint as an organization sort of spearheading the issue and working with government departments in the city and so on made it all possible.
It's really a challenge for Quint because government is much more comfortable funding bricks and mortar than they are funding the less tangible human support programs. But those are critical.
And there's a lot to take in the first little bit. So if there's a question in your head, throw it out, because you can be sure that there's somebody else in the room that has it too.
Okay. And you said something about a dog, so we're allowed to have dogs. That's our own choice.
It's your house.
Cool.
You guys, and that's the stuff from day one. You guys are homeowners, even though that you're in a co-op and you're, you know, a lot of people say, well, you're in a rent to own, or but the co-op is the 10 families, and your 10 families own your home, and you get the key. It's your house.
Okay.
And you do what you want there. You paint. You get an animal, as long as you are, maintaining the home, paying your mortgage, making sure that the animal's not a nuisance, you know, like anybody else.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So,
My keys.
there's your keys.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So Quint is saying, well, you can use community economic development models, which look at things like keeping wealth in the community, keeping investment in the community, keeping local ownership of goods in production, and creating local employment, and stabilizing housing and things like that as a really key part of that. And that is what, you know, and that you balance the social and the economic together, and you create solutions that meet both needs. That really flies in the face, I think, of a lot of the way economics is developing.
The more kind of reaction we got that, oh, you guys don't know what you're doing, you can't do this, the more we dug our heels in to say, you're damn rights we're going to do this.
Kind of a groundbreaking thing, social citizens, people owning their own homes.
And it doesn't happen overnight. And the patience for the steering committee of Quint, I really give a lot of credit to, because there was a determination to get to the goal.
With that goal in mind, we negotiated with the province and the city and came up with a 25% forgivable loan from the provincial government on a pilot basis for 10 families, and an additional 5% grant from the city of Saskatoon. It could be an option for low-income families to own their own homes.
But then us going to our local credit union in Pleasant Hill, St. Mary's Credit Union, and we went into their loans manager and had a 45-minute discussion with him to say, this is our plan, this is what we're doing, and he's going, wonderful, this is what we're looking for. We need to be doing something like this and paying back our neighborhood. We're in. And it was like, whoa, great. And that's a small branch, very small branch of the credit union. We went into the Saskatoon main branch downtown, which deals with millions of dollars. And they were hesitant. Again, the track record, right? You guys don't know what you're doing. It's really risky working with low-income families.
With any new idea, you wonder how it'll work. You sometimes need a little bit of good luck and good timing when you're starting something new. Our mission in life is to provide a great set of financial services and a great experience to our members, but at the same time to give something back to the community. What Quint needed as part of this program was a lender.
We proposed to our management that we should finance the first co-op with 5 or 10 mortgages.
Take a risk, a little risk.
It was seen as our management were horrified. We couldn't lend to low-income people. My goodness, it's in the inner city. Would we ever get our money back? And St. Mary's, being right here, said, well, you know, the need is sure here. If you guys will come up with half, we'll come up with the other half. And then I took that back to our board, and they said, St. Mary's is willing to do it? Well, I guess we're the biggest credit union, and we're afraid of the risk. I guess maybe we better go with it. And so that's how it started, and we partnered with St. Mary's and later with Co-op Trust.